Hi, everyone, and welcome to MadLit Musings podcast with Jaime Jo Wright. That's me. And today I have with me a very fun guest. We Facebook together in our Facebook group, Case Files Confidential. But I have with us Luana Ehrlich. Did I pronounce your last name right? Because I should have checked before we went on.
It's actually Ehrlich. It rhymes
Ehrlich.
with girlish.
Oh, wow. I did not get that one right at all. And is it
Believe me,
Luana
I've
or
been taught.
Luana?
And you did good with the Luana.
Okay.
That's it. It's
Okay.
Luana Ehrlich. There you go.
Luana Ehrlich. Awesome. Awesome. Spelled Ehrlich for anybody who wants to Google your name. Find
That's
out more
right.
about you.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
that's
is
awesome.
kind of a complicated last name.
Yeah. Is that and now I'm curious about the history of your last name. Is that a German
It
last
is
name?
it is German. It
Okay.
means honest. Yes,
Oh,
it is. The kind of the funny story about that is my maiden name is Pollock,
okay.
Pollock.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was, kind of growing up, what do you want to do and be when you grow up? I thought I wanted to be an author. I did tell people that when I was like 10 years old because I was a big reader. And
Okay.
I decided that I would not use that name because that name was just too complicated. People wouldn't be able to remember it.
Oh,
So I'm
sure. Yeah.
going to write under the pen name of Pam Black because I thought,
Oh,
oh, well, that would be so easy, Pam. This is a 10-year-old
right.
here.
I love it.
Pam Black. And of course, I didn't do that because I thought later when I married, then it was even more complicated. And I wanted to keep that name. I've never written under a pen name, but I did do kind of a funny thing in one of my books. I went ahead and had a character named Pam Black.
Did you? You almost have to. That's kind of like one of those things where you have to give a nod to your childhood self in one of your
Yes,
books.
exactly. I always like to put what I call little Easter eggs in all my books
Yeah,
that my brothers, sisters, or any relative would kind of figure out.
figure out. Oh, that's super fun. I love that. I love that. Well, for readers who aren't familiar with your books, tell us a little bit about what you write and all of that, I guess.
Okay.
Stories.
Exciting. I always love to talk about my books and writing, but I'm the author of Titus Ray Thrillers and Milas Gray Mysteries and Silas McKay Suspense. And
Right.
yes, I do have kind of a little rhyming thing going on there with Titus Ray and Milas Gray and Silas McKay. And I don't know. I just did it because I thought it was fun. I like
Yeah.
words. I like to do, and it's a good branding kind of thing. I think
Mhm.
authors, need to do a little something that's a little different. And
Mhm.
I feel like my readers remember, the names because of that. So I actually started writing 10 years ago when I wrote my first Titus Ray thriller,
Okay.
and it's One Night in Tehran.
Mhm.
And it's actually the story of a CIA intelligence officer who comes to faith in Christ
Okay.
because of some Iranian Christians
Okay.
after he was hidden away with them after a botched mission.
Sure.
And so when he returns to the States, through a series of events, he, has to eventually figure out how to live out this Christian life. He didn't grow
Yeah.
up in a Christian home. He came from an alcoholic father. And
Mhm.
so as he begins to try to figure this out, of course, he goes on lots of adventures. So consequently, I just finished my 10th book in that series last.
Wow. That's
So
awesome. So basically with Titus, we can start with book one and just follow him through every book, right? It's kind of like one of those things where you can fall in love with the character for real
ex-
and
exactly. One night in Tehran,
uh-huh.
he goes on the run from an assassin, and he ends up, believe it or not, in Norman, Oklahoma, which
Okay.
just happens to be where I live. It's just
Uh-huh.
a hotbed of terrorism here. But
And the podcast just got flagged by the CIA, but that's okay.
so but as a result of that, he does meet a beautiful Christian detective,
Okay.
and she becomes his love interest throughout the series. And I won't do any spoilers there, but yes, their story and his adventures start in that book one and continue. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So there's romance and there's suspense and a little bit of terrorism.
Oh dear,
Terrorism in
there you go
Oklahoma.
again. Yes, he goes on lots of adventures. My next book in that series is 2 days in Caracas.
Okay.
Then I go to 3 weeks in Washington, 4 months in Cuba. So you see a little pattern there.
Yeah, I do. That's
Every
really
book,
cool.
every book has a number with it, so readers
Mhm.
won't get confused. Excuse me.
No,
But
that's
then
fine.
I didn't think I could do 6 decades anywhere.
Hmm.
So I switched to steps. So the first one in that one is still a Titus Ray thriller, but
Okay.
I switched to steps.
To steps on that. Oh, that's so fun. Way cool. That's awesome. I love it. Sounds like a lot of good reading for people that's available um, through your books then. I like that.
Well, and my next series, I didn't start till I had written, I believe, the sixth book in the Titus series,
Okay.
and it's a mystery series. It's
Oh,
about a private investigator, and he lives in Washington, D.C., named Milas Gray.
okay.
I've been talking too much. I think
Yeah.
that, and he uh, has uh, a lot of issues. I guess you could say all of my books have elements of faith in them.
Okay.
Titus became a Christian, and you at the beginning, and you kind of see his journey.
Hmm.
Milas, on the other hand, is not a believer when the books first starts out,
Okay.
so that's a little different.
Hmm.
And then my third series, it just now came out. Let's see, last year,
Okay.
Silas McKay, and he is also an investigator for a corporate security firm.
Oh, okay. Great. So lots of mystery and lots of suspense. And I'm assuming there's romance probably in all of those, which, is always a good combination with the suspense and mystery too. So
Exactly. Yes, yes, yes. It's always a
I love
touch
it.
of romance. My books are all, of course, profanity free,
Mm,
erotica free.
hmm.
They're all clean, and all of them have an element of faith in them.
Yeah.
The they're all written in first person, by the way. So
Okay.
I'm a female that's writing as a male protagonist.
Yes.
The story behind that is that um, when I kind of got finished when I was about 11 years old with reading the Bobbsey twins and the
Hmm.
Nancy Drew and
Hmm.
all of those good
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah. The
And
classics.
yeah, and I saw that my dad was coming home from the library with lots of good mysteries, with lots of
Hmm.
good thrillers.
Hmm.
And so I asked him if I could, absolutely, if I could read some of those. And I really, now that I think about it this day, I think I'm shocked that he let me. These are adult books,
Yeah.
which I was not allowed as a 11-year-old to check out at the library.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I began reading thrillers at that time,
Hmm.
and he never would read a female author.
Okay. Interesting.
So, so all of the books I grew up reading were all written by males.
Right.
So I think that was one of the reasons that influenced me.
Right. Probably the perspective that you learned as a reader would be coming from that male perspective. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's right. That's right.
I had I relate to that just a little bit. Similarly, my growing up years, my dad and I would share books, and so I read a lot of books from the male perspective, as well as the other side of it, the female's perspective. But it was really funny. One time, I had submitted to an agent a query for a novel that I had written. And of course, my first name being Jamie, it could be male, it could be female,
Right.
right? So
Very
it's not like
good.
you
Yeah.
mark on your proposal your gender. So I
Right.
sent it in, and The response was, well, I can tell that this was written by a male author
Oh,
because the male perspective is extremely strong and we need to work on the feminine perspective. And I started
I
laughing and I told my
know.
husband, I said, oh, I guess I have a really strong male perspective of life.
Exactly. There you go. That's funny. Oh, that's good. That's good.
It was pretty funny. I really had to laugh at that one. I was like, oh, if you only knew.
Yes, if you only knew. And that was probably before you had pictures on, uh,
Right. It was
they could look you up on the
yeah,
internet.
yeah, the era before social media became super, super
Right.
prominent and
That's
everybody
it.
did background searches on you
Right,
knew
right,
your
right.
dog's middle name before they ever talked to you in person. So,
Yes,
oh,
exactly.
that's wonderful.
Exactly.
So,
That's
before we hopped onto the podcast, you and I were talking a little bit, and one of the things you mentioned is you've been writing Christian fiction for about 10 years. Prior to that, you didn't even read much Christian fiction. So, I'm really curious, what made you move in the direction of Christian fiction and why you feel it's so critical to include a biblical perspective in your stories.
well, and you probably read also that my dad was a pastor, a minister, and I married a minister, and I
Mhm.
married very young, 18. I was 18,
Mm.
believe it or not. I went from being a preacher's kid to being a preacher's
Preacher's
wife, if
wife.
you can believe
Yeah.
it, because he was pastoring a church.
Mhm.
He's a little older than me, so thankfully, I don't know if I would have let my daughter marry somebody that was 18, but um my faith has just always played a very important role in my life. I just even though I read secular fiction,
Mhm.
there were many, many, many times when I would start reading a book, especially within the last 20 years,
Mhm.
when I would start it off, had a good plot, but I couldn't finish reading it. I mean,
Mm.
I just couldn't keep reading it.
Mhm.
So much profanity,
Yeah.
and I just couldn't. So it never occurred to me that I would write a Christian fiction book. All I wanted to do um, was write, was
Okay.
to write a
Mhm.
good story.
Mhm.
But a- as soon as I started writing, I thought, oh, I think this has to be a Christian fiction. I'm not
Mhm.
sure it could get in the secular market. Nobody's going to
Sure.
read it, or
Right.
I'm going to
Right.
be very much get bad reviews because they don't, because it has that element of Christian faith.
Right. Right.
So, but then, that became just part of who the character was,
Mhm.
and I didn't really think any more about it once I decided to go that route. And since then, of course, I've read Christian fiction, but it wasn't a big part of my reading
Mhm.
before I started writing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too when you look at Christian fiction and how it's even included in bookstores and such. It's almost its own genre,
Yes,
so to speak, like in a general market fiction bookstore, they'll have, you know, mystery suspense, they'll have the
right,
romance section, and then there's the Christian section over here.
right,
So even if you're
right,
writing mystery and suspense, it's not likely that you'll wind up in that section
right,
if you have a Christian slant. So,
right. Joel Rosenberg, of course,
mhm,
and you know of him. I read a lot of him, and really
mhm.
most of my books are in that genre.
Okay.
If you read Joel Rosenberg, you could easily read mine.
Hmm.
And he, of course, is in the secular market, but he has a good platform. You
Hmm.
may not know that, but he worked in Israel. He was Netanyahu's one of his advisors, and
Okay.
so he had the the platform to be able to
Right.
get into that secular market.
Right.
And of course, John Grisham isn't really branded as Christian fiction,
Right.
but still there's elements of faith in his
Hmm.
books.
Hmm.
And so it's a little difficult to be in both those markets.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you on that.
But that's the reason that I do advertise all of my books in secular fiction, in the secular fiction categories,
Okay.
when I am on certain websites, that will push your book if it's on a discount.
Mm-hmm.
I very often advertise in that market, and so consequently, I do get emails from readers who thoroughly enjoy it,
Sure.
and say I realized later that this was actually a Christian fiction category book, but
Mm-hmm.
I want you to know I really enjoyed it, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people don't mind having that element in the
No.
story. I think sometimes when they see a book categorized as Christian, there's a stereotype that's immediately applied to it. But when they start reading it without knowing, sometimes they're like, oh, Christianity can be rather grace filled and
Yeah,
kind.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. I love it. So when you write your characters, tell me a little bit about their faith journeys. I know we were talking about Titus Ray and him coming to know the Lord and stuff. Do you, as you carry them from book to book, then do they grow in their faith? Do they have faith struggles, or how do you incorporate that faith walk into their stories?
Yeah, for each of the characters, I think it's just a little different. But with Titus, he is just a lost puppy out there when it comes to, he had never even had a Bible in his life. He had never
Okay.
been to church. He had been to a vacation Bible school once,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed the popsicle, and that was it. So part of his beginning story is really about going to a bookstore and buying his first Bible.
Mm.
Now again, he's on the watch for an assassin as he does this, understand? Who's after
That's
him.
quite the combination. Let's go Bible shopping while we dodge an assassin. I love that.
And just one of, like, when he goes to church for the first time,
Hmm.
he decides to go. The person that he meets in the bookstore invites him to go to a church, so he
Okay.
decides, maybe I should do that, because
Sure.
he was rehabbing in Oklahoma from a broken leg that he suffered when he
Mm.
was back in Tehran.
Hmm.
So when he goes to the church, he doesn't know what to wear, and he always wears his gun. So of
Right.
course he has to, he wears a jacket, he's got his gun, but he's very uncomfortable when all of a sudden the pastor gets up and wants everyone to shake hands with each other. What
Yeah.
is this? And he's afraid and
Hmm.
it's just very, very, there's just so many things in our own life, if we've been a Christian for a long
Hmm.
time, that we cannot begin to imagine what someone who has just walked into this life,
Yeah.
you know, and then
Hmm.
on top of it all, he is a secret spy.
Right.
He's looking at the shadows,
Hmm.
and so forth. Well, and the church that he goes to actually plays a big role in what happens later.
Okay.
I won't go into
Yeah.
any spoilers, but yeah, it plays a big role, and eventually he does begin to grow. And one of the ways that he figured out that
Hmm.
he should grow is that he realizes he needs to read the Bible.
Okay.
And so he made a vow that, and he's a kind of an OCD guy
Hmm.
anyway. He's a little quirky,
Sure.
but
We like
he,
quirky. Quirky's good.
yeah, I like quirky. I wonder why I write quirky. Uh, so anyway, he makes a vow that as much as possible, he will try to read a chapter from the Bible every day.
Mm.
And he was advised by someone, well, you need to start with the gospel. And so he does.
Yeah.
So, he's still struggling. He fails all the time. He's a big liar. You can imagine, he's a
Right. Yeah.
CIA, and so he lies about everything,
Hmm.
things that are unnecessary. So
Sure.
he's got to learn to do that. He has a
Hmm.
terrible temper. He's got to learn to
Mm.
control that. And so yes, he begins to even tell some people about what happened to him, and he's shocked at how they react to this.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a big deal in his life. Now with Milas, he doesn't become a believer until a little bit later. And
Okay.
then, he too has to struggle because he's been living in Washington, D.C., and he's all involved. He works for a senator who's the head of the Judiciary Committee.
Mm,
Does investigations for him. And so he's all involved in that world. And
okay.
he is a very wealthy guy and has been living a very secular life. And all of a sudden he's, got to figure this out. What
Yeah.
does this mean? And he
Yeah.
has a Christian love interest, and she's kind of shocked at some of the things,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
about him. And so there's that. The last character I've just done, Silas, he is the head of a corporate security firm in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
And he has recently lost his wife due to brain cancer.
Mm-hmm.
He's been a Christian probably he considers all his life,
Sure.
but he cannot get past the loss of his wife and
Mm.
what was God thinking,
Right. Right.
how he had prayed about this and so he's without his wife, and yet he's carrying on his investigations, and he's just struggling. It's a struggling kind of faith,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get past this, but yet he wants to continue, going to church, but he's having a hard time. So it's kind of a different perspective. All three of them have different faith walks,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think, and I have readers write to me, I'm sure you do too, all the
Uh-huh.
time, that
Uh-huh.
tell you how their books affect them. And
Mm-hmm.
I just love the fact that it's encouraging to people in their own
Yeah.
Christian walk
Yeah.
to read these books, despite the fact they're mystery thrillers and
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I love it. And it's so great when you can read a book for entertainment, but then you also walk away either being challenged or encouraged in faith,
right. Mhm.
or and even for those people who may not come from a faith background, they
Right,
start thinking about it. They start
right,
wondering, what is God's investment in me as a human
right,
being and as
right.
somebody who's walking this earth. So I think that's really great. The other thing I want to pull out that I noticed when I was reading your bio was that you really like a Starbucks caramel macchiato. And I felt that was really, really important that we mentioned that
Yeah,
today.
let's do mention that. Oh, yes, it's my favorite drink. I was thrilled the other day when when my grandson was home from university. Well, he's a med student, and
Okay.
when he came home for Christmas, and he said, "I'm living on caramel macchiato." And I said, "Oh,"
Mm,
and
yes, yes.
I didn't even know that he would really remember that
Oh, that's so
I uh,
awesome.
that I love those. Yeah.
I
So
love that.
yes.
I love how different things like that sneak into an author's bio. And I encourage
Uh-huh.
anybody listening to read the author's bios because
Yeah,
of those
because it's
little
always
tidbits
in
that get
there.
snuck in. Yeah, yeah. I love
Yeah,
that.
and I always have a dog. All of my people have dogs,
Okay. Uh-huh.
they've all got dogs in some capacity, okay?
Okay.
And and then they all drink coffee. They always drink a lot of coffee.
Oh, see, we're
There's
we're
always
kindred
a little
spirits here.
sport. There's always a little sports element because I'm a
Okay.
big Dallas Cowboy fan. And,
Oh, okay.
now they're all three not Dallas Cowboy fans. Only
Okay.
one of them is, but
Okay.
but I always get some football in there too.
Get some
But I
football in
mean,
there.
it's a natural thing. I mean,
Well, it is. It is. And I thought for a while there you and I would be kindred spirits with the coffee thing, but then you mentioned Dallas Cowboys, and of
Oh,
course I'm a Green Bay Packers, so this could be a problem. We might
that's
have some tension in our friendship after
good.
all.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, fun. So, Luana, if readers want to find out more about your books or actually pick up your books and read them, etc., what's the best place for them to find you and where should they go?
Well, they can Google my name first of all, because then I'm sure I'm going to show up
You'll
all
show
over the
up.
place
Yep.
there. But I do have my website. It's just my name, Luana EHRLICH.com. That's my website. I went ahead and have 3 different websites for each of my book series, so you can put Titus Ray Thrillers, Milas Gray
Oh, neat.
Mysteries,
Okay.
or Silas McKay Suspense. All of those have with .com. You can do those. Of course, you can just go on Amazon and Google me there, or put me in the search engine, and
Mhm.
you'll find me there.
Awesome.
I do have a blog that's called hisglorymyjoy.com.
Okay. Okay.
Hisglorymyjoy.com. So it's kind of a little devotional thing.
Yeah.
I just do about a once a month blog on there, a little
Okay.
devotional, very short. So those are all the places that
That's great.
I can be found.
That's great. Love it. Well, good. I hope readers will check out your books. They sound super fun and they sound like they will appeal to men and women both who love
I have
that spy
lots
mystery.
and lots and lots of male readers.
That's
I
that's
do.
great.
I do.
That's great. I'm gonna have to pick up a few of these for my dad. It sounds like something
Yes,
he will definitely
I
enjoy.
bet he would love them. Yeah, I
But
bet
I'll
he.
have to read them first. So that's
Now,
always the
I
caveat.
will say this, yes, I'll end with this, and I
Uh-huh.
do put out a newsletter every 2 weeks, and there's
Okay.
always one of the books on Kindle that's discounted on there.
Perfect.
It's usually 99 cents. I do have some free ones sometime,
Hmm.
but if you're signed up for my newsletter, then you're going to hear about the discounts that are on there, and all you have to do to sign up is to go to my website.
Okay.
And when you sign up, you'll get a free book. You'll get the
Oh,
prequel.
well,
There's a
there you go.
prequel
There you
to
go.
there's a prequel to the first series to Titus Ray. It's called One Step Back,
Hmm.
and that's the prequel to the series. And so you'll get that free book when you sign up for my newsletter.
That sounds good. I just snuck a peek at the cover too, and it looks definitely interesting. So
Okay, good.
everybody rush and sign up for that newsletter
Okay,
right
do that.
away.
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, Luana, this was super fun to have you here today, and I really appreciate your time
Okay.
coming to visit.
Well, it's been great, Jamie. I'm enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely.